Hello everyone, this is Roger with Dabble Lab, and today we're going to be talking about LUIS, or Microsoft's Language Understanding, and why that's interesting for our bots and for Cortana. So first off, the thing that's important about LUIS, or the Natural Language Understanding Engine, which is a cognitive service from Microsoft, is it really solves the complexity of trying to figure out the user's intent. Okay, and what I mean by that is, let's say for example, you're writing a bot to book an airline flight. There's lots of different ways that you could say, I need a flight, I need a ticket, I want to travel, I want to fly to various places, and just using something like regular expressions to try and find all the different combinations of the way people might ask something is really tricky. So using cognitive services that's built on, machine learning and artificial intelligence is the way to do that. So let's talk about how we actually configure this. The first thing that we would need to do is go out to www.lewis.ai, and you need to create an account. And once you log in, you'll come to this welcome page, and then you can click create an account. And I'm going to do that right here. We're just going to create one here called demo Lewis bot. And once you create your individual app, you come to this page. And this is where you actually start training your intents and things like that. Now, I'm going to kickstart the process a little bit here by using a pre-built model or using a pre-built a JSON model. And I'll pull that over here. And this is just the same one that's out of the samples. If we go over to the bot builder samples repo, which is in Microsoft, GitHub Microsoft Bot Builder samples. If we go down to samples, we go down to JavaScript Node.js, and we go down to number 12. This is the one called NLP with Lewis. So if we go in there, I just clone this, and that's what we're taking a look at here. And one of the things that it has here under its cognitive models here is this reminders JSON. And this might seem, like there's a lot of stuff in here, and there is, but if we break it down in a couple of different pieces, we're trying to figure out three main intents. We've got whether we're going to add something to the calendar, whether we're going to find something from the calendar, or whether there's none. It's important to have a none intent that has typically some nonsense in it so that there's a delta or comparison against those, and it just makes the language understanding model work a lot better. The next section here where we have the utterances and we have the different ways that we might choose to add an event here for calendar add a new task, add an event, blah, blah, blah. Different combinations of the way people might add those particular things. And the more examples you have, typically the better, at least having maybe a dozen or so for each. And then we have some different ones for finding things on the calendar. And then none, we have some nonsense, email, cloning, change the meeting, things that we don't want to have that are different from what we're trying to do. Okay. And so you might be saying, well, where did this model come from? Well, you can do it a couple of ways. You could start with actually just building out the model that you have here. So there are a couple of different ways that you can get that. You can go in here and you can design all of this in the UI. You can add your intents, you can add your utterances, you can add your entities. You can do all of that stuff. And you can also uh, create it via text. There is a format here called LUDown, if you will. And that's essentially like a markup file where we could go in here and we can do these. And you can see that this syntax is a lot more concise, right? Instead of having the whole JSON file over here where we have all of this, extra kind of noise here where we're adding things and we're specifying the intent. We can go over here and just add the intent and then add all of our utterances. Do the same here and do the same here. And then you can use command line tools to use this to generate the JSON, or you can also use um, the Lewis command line tool to just grab that and throw it up into LUNS. But what we're going to do is just use the existing one here that we have, and we're going to see how to import that up there and then talk about training and publishing that. So one of the first things that we need to do here for our app is import um, our models here. So I showed earlier how to create a new app in here where you could do something from a blank app. But since we have our JSON file created, we're just going to go ahead and import that. So for my apps, we can import a new app, and I'm going to choose, go into that directory, cognitive models, and grab the reminders JSON. And we can see it's pulled that into the intent section here. And if we look in there, we can see all of the utterances, the same things that we created there, or the same things that were pulled in from the file. So the next thing you need to do is train the model. And this is actually taking these specific utterances and intents and running them through the language model there. And then we also need to publish it, and we can publish it to a slot here for production. And when it's published, when we actually call the endpoint, and we can take a look at the endpoint here. And these are important things, right? For one, we need an authoring key, and we're going to need, um, the endpoint key here for production. And we're going to have our actual endpoints here as well. So how do we configure all of that stuff? Let's go ahead and set that up. The first thing that we need to do to set that up is go over to our bot file and then manage that in our services. And we can see that the bot file just starts off with just its regular development endpoint. So I want to add a LUNS endpoint here. And this is just kind of a canned one. And we can see a few things that we need to fill out here. We need the app ID, the authoring key, the subscription key, and the LUNS region. So let's go ahead and get those values. So here's our authoring key. And the name of our app here is and over here in application information is the application key. So let's put that over here in app ID. Make sure the display name matches the name. And I need my LUNS region key and sub key. The region here is West US. And the subscription key here is actually just the same as the authoring key. And let me see. So let's make sure that we can configure, finish setting the rest of this up here. So let's go over to actually in the index JSON here where it sets up the LUNS configuration. You'd have the name of your app there. And then it's going to go in and look that up for the LUNS config and then configure the LUNS application. And inside of our bot, let's take a look at the code to use that. So inside of here, we're using our Lewis recognizer to recognize our turn context. And then what we're getting back from that is our Lewis result. We're grabbing the top intent and we're checking to see if it's the none, if we didn't recognize it. And then if it, if it's not none, then we're gonna put out the top intent and the top score because it doesn't just tell you what it thinks the intent is, it actually gives you its percentage probability that it's correct. And then if it didn't find that, then it's going to tell us that this is no intents were found and we're looking for either to add or find events. Okay. So let's go ahead and run this and see if we got everything working okay here. And here's our test. So that's working for that one, scoring of 89. And we can see that that's looking to find. Obviously, you get some strange results sometimes because hello said still thought it was calendar fine, but note that it wasn't really very sure of that. Only 0.27 or point, basically 27% sure that that is what you intended. But when we're typing something like, do I have any appointments today? We have that. Okay, so that's the way to configure and use Lewis with your bots. Thanks a lot, everyone.